What do Flame Princess and Oedipus Rex have in common? As a start, they both got lumped off because their pip-pops were afraid of getting jacked up by their own kiddos.
Why would he do this to his pip-plop-plop?
And it all began with a prophecy. For Phoebe, it goes something like this. Flame King grogs that his newborn daughter will one day become more powerful than he can ever imagine. Naturally, because he's a real-time jingle blaster.
Real-time jingle blaster.
And so very Shakespeare.
Everyone is all deceitful and Shakespeare.
He decides to yeet her into the wilderness. This is just like the beginning of the story of the dingwad Eddie. There is even a scene where Flame Princess gets adopted by Rock Woodsman until she burns his wooden house to the ground. Kinda reminds me of the uncontrolled power of Hercules, now that I think of it. It's Greek tragedy all around. Now, allow me to refresh your memory about the real out loud flimflammer, Itty Bitty Eddie, aka Oedipus Rex. King Laius of Thebes hears that his son will moidle him and marry his wife. Ew for the latter. So what does he do? Lumps off the baby like dookie diapers. And that doesn't quite work in his favor, does it? Baby Oedipus gets adopted, and when he grows old enough, he gets his very own croak dream prophecy: kill dad, marry mom. Blech. To avoid it, he skedaddles the Bjorg out of there, but right into the prophecy that he tries to avoid. He kills a man on the road who turns out to be his dad, solves the riddle of the Sphinx, saves Thebes, marries Queen Jocasta, who turns out to be his mom. Blech. Becomes king and has kids with her. Then a plague hits Thebes, thank God, and the only cure is finding out who moidled the last king. Guess who did it? Yeah, yikes. Queen Jocasta unalives herself. Oedipus stabs his own eyes out, understandably. A rough day all around, okay? And the moral of the story? Don't try to outrun a prophecy, you dinguses, or it will come true. And don't put your boing-loings where it doesn't belong. Okay?
Boing-loings!
Alright, back to Flame Princess. Her story is similar to this one. A child prophesies to destroy a parent overreacts, a dramatic exile, and eventually, prophecy fulfilled. Except instead of eye stabbing and mom marrying, we get radical honesty, emotional growth, and freestyle rapping. Honestly, way to go FP. Yeah! Now, let's talk Freud. Ugh, that guy. He takes the story of Ed and uses it in his theory, Oedipus complex. He claims that every son wants to kill his daddy and marry his mama. His mama! Ew! He said boys had this thing called castration anxiety, a fear of getting punished by their dad for wanting their mom. What a sicko, right? Oh, and he totally leaves out the girls, saying that they suffer from something called penis envy. Ew, dude. No. Here's the problem with Freud the dillweed. He associates power with the physical penis because it's the Victorian times, okay? Everybody was sexually repressed. Sexism was tops blooby, and the societal taboos were over the roof in those times. Because the more you repress something, the weirder it creeps out. But you know what? He wasn't totally off. There was a method in his funky junk theory.
That's some funky junk, brother.
That's when we bring in the one with the Mondo Mama brain, Jacques Lacan. He thought Freud was onto something, but rather than it being about killing pops, marrying moms, and boing-loings, it was about language, law, and power. He saw this whole Oedipus thing as a transition from the imaginary realm to the symbolic realm. Oh, and next to these two things, there's also something called the real realm. Okay, so what the Bjork are the imaginary, symbolic, and real. We gotta talk about Lacan's funky fresh pretzel-like Borromean knot. Schmauz out. On the bottom left, you have the symbolic. That's the world of words, rules, language, and laws. Our social reality. It's what tells you that a stop sign means, well, you guessed it, stop. On the top, you have the imaginary. That's the world of fantasy, imagination, illusion, and what you see in the mirror. It's your own personal, sometimes totally bananas view of yourself and the world around you. And then over here at the bottom right, we have the real. This is the hard one to grok. The real isn't the physical world as we usually think of. It's the part of reality that totally resists language. It's the raw, unfiltered shock of a traumatic event. It's the primal, intense force that you cannot put into words. It's pure emotions that's just too big for your brain to handle. Think about a sudden, terrifying car crash. It happens too fast for your mind to process with words. Your body reacts on a pure, instinctive level. That's the real. It's a truth that exists beyond our ability to describe it or imagine it. Or look at the peeps winning a prize. Their expression is frozen or shocked. They usually find it hard to say anything right after the shock effect of being too happy and ecstatic, shaking their prize like cave people. Or think about a moment when you've hit your thumb with a hammer. Your immediate reaction isn't to say, "I'm experiencing a severe and painful contusion to my thumb." You would say something like, "Ouch! That's the real. The imaginary, symbolic, and the real order, all three of these are what make up a person's psyche. And for the love of glob, Jackie Boy saves us from the unpleasant and disturbing throw-up story of Oedipus and gives us this transition between psychic structures instead. That's pretty math.
It's pretty math, you psychopath!
Lacan says that when we are born, we are in the imaginary realm. This is a fantasy world where we don't see ourselves as separate from our parents or our surroundings. We don't have our own identity yet, but eventually, we're forced out of this fantasy into the symbolic realm. This transition is a kind of metaphorical castration. We get ripped away from the imaginary bliss of being one with our mother and are forced to accept the rules of the father. What Lacan calls the name of the father, a symbolic pip-pop. It's a painful but necessary break. This is the moment we realize we're not the center of the universe. Really sounds like we were big narcissists as babies, but it's true. We don't have ultimate power and are forced to become our own person within a social structure. The Flame King tries to prevent that necessary transition, aka castration, that Flame Princess has to go through in order to grow up and have her own identity. This brings us to Flame Princess and the Lantern. The Flame King's lantern isn't just a baby prison, it's a symbolic womb. She's a force of nature, a being of the real, with no sense of self, no language, and no connection to the outside world. By locking her away, he keeps her in a state of primal, pure, unformed power, inside the imaginary. He prevents her from ever truly being born into the symbolic realm in a natchy way.
It ain't natchy.
Not physically, of course, but psychologically. He does this to prevent her from becoming a subject of her own. He wants to stop her from entering the world of language and law, where she might form her own structured identity and become an authority in her own right. For the Flame King, the prophecy beeswax isn't about his own death, unlike the father of Oedipus. It's a fear of symbolic castration. He's terrified of losing his power and his place as the ultimate authority, the name of the law. He fears his daughter will grow up to be her own person, create her own rules, and challenge his law, just as the prophecy foretold. And so, his attempt to stop her from being born into the symbolic world is the very thing that sets her on a path to do just that. When she finally breaks free, she has to navigate a world she doesn't understand at all, full of language and rules she was never taught. She has to find a way to create her own identity and become her own person. While she was in the lantern, she was an object rather than a subject. She was in the possession of her father. When she's released, her power is initially all-consuming and destructive. This is the raw, untamed imaginary spilling out into the world. She's not burning things down out of malice, she's burning them down because she lacks a structured identity and cannot differentiate herself from her surroundings. Herself and the world are still one and the same in her mind, and that unity is fiery chaos. The fire represents a struggle with the order of real, a traumatic, unsymbolized power that she cannot control or understand yet. Her escape becomes a perfect example of her first steps into the symbolic order, which is the ultimate goal of her Oedipus journey in the Lacanian sense. Remember the scene where Finn starts crying and Flame Princess is like, "I understand now. You're a water elemental. You cry and cry all the time." That's one of her first realizations of her own self or ego and the symbolic order that she's trying to find herself in. She's trying to make sense of the world by using language, one of the building blocks of the symbolic order. She's trying to find a law, a rule, to explain the actions of others. She feels lost in a world she never had any experience with. At one point, she gets so overwhelmed with her emotions that she agrees to stabilize them with Phoebe's highly questionable machine. That machine inevitably reminds me of the horrifying neurosurgical treatment called lobotomy. It involves stabbing the prefrontal cortex of the brain to fix the patient's neurotic or psychotic disorders. Ugh, I can't even look at that image. That's bizonkers. That's her attempt to emotionally castrate herself because she can't find her way in the symbolic order. Her imaginary order is too chaotic to negotiate with. This is a pivotal moment. Flame Princess isn't just trying to control her power, she's trying to metaphorically castrate herself of all the emotions that she sees as destructive, even though it would give her a permanent poo brain. She's attempting to bypass the slow, difficult process of integrating the imaginary into the symbolic. She wants to cut away the parts of her that are too real and too chaotic to fit into the world of order and law. In a way, she's trying to do what her father wanted her to do all along, to be an object rather than a subject. She's choosing to become something predictable and stable rather than a whole, complex person who can feel and express intense emotions, even the destructive ones. And thank Glob she doesn't go through with it. By listening to her melon heart and rejecting the machine, she chooses the real difficult work of self-discovery. She chooses to find a way to live with her fire, not erase it. This choice is what ultimately leads her to her new hobby, freestyle rapping. She spends a lot of time with Cinnamon Bun and freestyle rapping after she becomes king. But why rap? Why not some other hobby? I'll tell you why. Because rap isn't just a fun new pastime for her. It's a perfect, real-time negotiation between the imaginary realm and the symbolic realm. The moment she starts to rap, she's actively engaging with the very world her father tried to keep her from. It's an assertion of the self, her own unique voice and identity, her imaginary ego. But she has to do it using the strict rules of language, rhyme, and rhythm, which is the symbolic order. Think about it. A freestyle rapper has to express their inner thoughts and feelings, or their self, while simultaneously following the external rules of the beat and the rhyme scheme. She's learning to control her raw, fiery emotions and give them a structured form. When she's struggling to find topics to rap about, you can see her trying to bridge the gap between her raw, untamed self and the world of language. She's meditating on and mediating those two realms, and it's not easy. She doesn't yet have a stable, structured sense of self to put into words. Her brain is still building the mental and emotional pathways to translate her fiery essence into a coherent narrative. Her freestyle rap is her fighting to find her voice in a world of rules she was never taught. Her victory in the rap battle isn't just about beating the rap bear. It's about her triumph in the transition. With her own melon heart and the power of language, she doesn't just rap, she creates her identity. She becomes the champion of the rap battle, and in doing so, she masters the symbolic order. She raps the bear's legs off as she stands on her own 2 feet. a fully formed subject with her own voice and authority. Her Oedipus complex, or in this case, her transition from the imaginary to the symbolic, isn't a single moment, or has anything to do with her boing-loings. It's this entire journey of moving from a being of pure fire to a person who can understand and use language to rule a kingdom and beat the son of Rat Bear.
She squashed me for fun.
And that journey will keep on going and changing her throughout her life. Flame Princess is one of my favorite Adventure Time characters, and I really enjoyed diving deep into her psyche through a Freudian and Lacanian sense. What do you think about all this? Is it confusing? Eye-opening? Did you enjoy it? Do you want more of it? Leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you want more videos like this.